So we recently played 5 Minute Dungeon, this real-time card game where you need to work with friends. It's a cooperative game to match symbols to conquer cards in the dungeon, which act as like monsters or obstacles, and eventually leading up to a boss, which has many of these like symbols, and everybody needs to play cards in real time, and you have literally 5 minutes to defeat the dungeon. But there are some like things that allow you to break out of that time mechanics, such as like one character has the ability to pause time, and I mean, that's actually about it. Just one character has the ability to pause time. And also Overcooked. But before we get into Overcooked, I want to like sit on 5 Minute Dungeon for a couple minutes and just talk about how like, you know, we were able to kind of like coordinate like what resources were we best to play. Like, oh, I have the most like red swords, or you had the most like blue scrolls, and someone else had the most maybe purple jumping people. But that was only like the first layer of strategy, and it started to get like even more fun when you started to kind of notice how we could optimize our time. Like, I've already played this game a bunch, and I don't like being the one that's like, oh, here are all the tips and tricks like right out the gate. So it was really cool to see you kind of like within our first 2 games, you were picking up like, oh, okay, let's do a designated card flipper person. Let's have it like a certain type of style of card flip. Let's make sure, you know, we do XYZ before throwing cards on the table, because that all starts like shaving time off the clock, right? Whereas like I imagine most people are going to like play their cards, you know, talk to each other, and like they sort of will slowly realize the time pressure, and maybe they won't even get to that point where they're like, we need to designate a person to flip the card, yada yada yada. You kind of became the point man, the captain. Like, what do you think about team dynamics that like arise from like that meta layer of gameplay, I guess?
Yeah, I can't really talk about it without going into my opinions on Overcooked 2. Overcooked 2 also.
Then let's talk. Let's also bring in Overcooked. But for the listeners, anyone who's not familiar, let's kind of like give a little thing of Overcooked.
Team cooking game with everybody has different responsibilities, right? Like fundamentally, that's kind of it, right?
At a character level, they don't have different responsibilities. It's like everybody is thrown into the same kitchen, and most of the time the kitchen is like open and you can run around to all stations. Sometimes the kitchen is like sectioned off, and some players will be locked into some parts of the kitchen. But yeah, it's a similar thing to like 5 Minute Dungeon, where you all have access to a lot of the same resources, and it's how you work together to share those resources.
Right. So then the question becomes, how do you have the most efficient team? That's kind of how I approach these situations. And after like my first round of playing 5 Minute Dungeon, I immediately saw that there were inefficiencies in the way that our team was attacking the situation. And it's because you need roles, right? I think the problem is that we get caught up and we feel like rushing is the best way to get through the game, right? It's like, we need to have tomatoes chopped. We're like making a burger, but if everybody's rushing to chop the tomatoes because we have like a lack of chopped tomatoes, then we're going to also have like buns that are not being plated. We're going to have meat that isn't being ground, or, you know, whatever the other like food options are, right?
We end up having like 3 pounds of tomatoes for one burger order that's being called out. And we could potentially have multiple people calling out burger orders too, which is why we like at some point have to like form roles with each other.
Yeah, and 5 Minute Dungeon is the same way. If there's a card that pops up and it's like, okay, as a team, we need to put down 2 greens and a red, right? Like of our resource cards. If everybody puts down a green immediately, right, then you're going to burn through your deck. So having either designations, or the meta that we found was before anybody puts down a card, you have to call out what you're going to supply, right? And it's counterintuitive because you're in this like beat the clock mindset, but you beat your deck. But if you're trying to beat the clock, you're gonna like run out of cards. You're gonna lose your deck. And there's in this game, there's no way to reshuffle, or like, you know, once you run out of cards, you lose essentially, or you cannot continue to progress. You can't contribute to your team any longer. So knowing exactly who at every given moment is going to play a card, it takes like maybe an extra second or so to have that consultation, but it's worth it. You're going to make better choices, and you're going to be able to conserve in order to try to make it to the dungeon boss.
And to compare that to Overcooked 2, you became the point man for 5 Minute Dungeon. I very much became the point man / Gordon Ramsay for our Overcooked kitchen, where it was way more so about like, okay guys, like I'll call out the orders, I'll grab this and that. Like, Ryan, you're over here, you get this and that. We have a third friend, maybe a fourth friend, and I'm just like doing my best to kind of like connect everyone to what would be easiest. And part of that is also considering like how familiar with games they are and or what the cognitive load is, which like I know for you, I could give you maybe like, let's say 3 to 4 things, whereas our friend who's like a little less experienced, I only give them maybe like 2 things, right? And maybe those things are in closer proximity. Or if the level's more difficult, now I'm like, okay, we're going to have to like level you up. You're going to handle this on one end of the kitchen and this on the other end of the kitchen. You're going to do a lot of running around, but you only have to focus on 2 things, and kind of like balancing all of that in my head while we're also facing like new challenges that I think the levels are about only 2 minutes long, maybe 2.5 minutes. So it's again that like beat the clock, but order after order after order is coming in, and even the orders themselves have their own little time limit. So I guess as point man / Ramsey in that case, I also have to read like which things are highest value for what time limits we have, and be able to call out like tomato, buns, and then that activates you for buns, and it activates our friend for tomato and stuff like that. That part, I just, as a player, like I totally enjoy. I feel like mild guilt because I almost feel like I'm bossing people around too much. But we end up getting like 3 stars, and like I'm not actually going like, this is rotten. Like I'm not. They're not getting the evil Gordon Ramsay. I don't use that method. It's way more MasterChef Kids Gordon Ramsay. That is me at Overcooked 2.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's leadership more than like bossiness. I like in when you see the clock ticking, you're not like, your feelings aren't going to get hurt. I think sensitivity is, I'm a very sensitive person, but I kind of suspend my, emotional energy for when I'm playing that game, or it's like if people are yelling at you to do something, it's because it's urgent. It's not really personal, unless they're throwing out personal stuff. I mean, it could be like, you always do this. You're sloppy. Like, you're terrible at video games. I hate being your friend. Like, obviously that's like not going to be conducive to teamwork, or morale. But I think there are ways to be clear and direct, and maybe even volume is a kind of a indicator of urgency. And so I try not to take things personally in that mindset. But it is funny that both of these games do have the time commitment, and I think that in our future games, we could have one person whose job it is to call out the time remaining. Like designating that as a specific role could be helpful, because we probably all lose a little bit of time, like when we're checking, like monitoring the clock, and so just trying to find ways to shave off any wasted time, I guess, and we don't ordinarily think of like timekeeper as like part of the part of the role, but I think if it became that, then the other team members would be able to concentrate. They'd be able to focus better on their tasks.
Yeah, and right there, we are now meta-strategizing still about the game. Like we had not discussed the time thing before, but I 100% agree. Like, almost probably should just fall on the role of whoever's calling out the orders, since their eye is already going up to that side of the screen. But again, this is not like specific to the characters, the avatars doing gameplay mechanics. We are talking about the human beings. Like you as a human being, you are going to use your eye to do this and like call this out. And I think that's really cool. I don't know why exactly. Like, I wish I had more scientific words to explain it, but like, I imagine to some extent the people who are really into co-op games, and if you listener are into co-op games and you've done this before, please let us know with what game and like, what the actual happenstance was. But to get back to what we were just talking about, like, that is just fun. It's like, okay, now that we are outside the time pressure, right? And we can just kind of almost post-mortem what our routine was and things like that. We are in a much calmer environment. And if anything, we're kind of like having fun figuring out like what we can, I don't want to say cheat, but like what advantages can we get, right? It's almost like when you're like trying to face a Dark Souls boss and you're like, oh, I found the perfect corner. Dude, just roll into this corner and then he'll keep striking you. He'll try to strike you, but he can't get you. And you can just keep getting that hit. And that's how you beat the boss. Like that's what it feels like when we're talking about like, okay, if one person just looked at the clock, dude, everyone would be saving time because they're not moving their eyes off of their workstations and that, and the third.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's not easy being an Overcooked e-athlete. Like, we're putting in the time, we're putting in the work. Our fingers go numb some days.
I would love to see a, like, Overcooked
esports?
Oh, yeah, Overcooked competition. I was going to potentially say Overcooked game show, but I feel like that's honestly just Next Level Chef or like many of these like cooking competition shows. But actually, you know, if they did just get like four random people and they were like okay,
a 1 versus 100.
Almost,
like 1 versus 100, but Overcooked edition. Like the game 1 versus the 360 video game 1 versus 100, not the actual TV show.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. This bonus bite's gonna get a little bit longer because now we are gonna flesh out this like live Microsoft sponsored version of Overcooked. Okay, so check this, right? We still have audiences of like, let's say 100 people, right? And we get 4 like random contestants. And I guess, you know, just to keep things simple, these 4 randos, right? It'll be people from the audience. They're all in the queue. And
Price
like,
is Right style.
Price is Right. Thank you. Yes, Price is Right. Come on down. Like all 4 people. And they don't know each other at all. They get put into some like randomized, procedurally generated like cooking layout. Sometimes they'll be split in half. Other times it'll have like sliding around carts, what have you, whatever. And the actual mechanics of it, right, is same as Overcooked, but the audience is now picking off a very concise menu. Like again, going back to Gordon Ramsay being like, oh, pick 5 things that you're really good at. Make that your menu. Like we're going to have like the team pick maybe like, okay, you have the choice of like a burger, you know, fish and chips, sushi, blah, 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 tacos, like, and they pick like 4 or 5 things. And then the audience of 100 people will randomly get selected to like pick a new, not a new recipe, but pick what order comes next in line. So they'll get started with like, let's say 3 burgers or whatever, and then it'll start pinging the audience who are actively watching these people like run around in their goofy avatars and be like, okay, sushi. Or, you know, some people who really want to like throw you for a loop will pick like the most out of left field or like hardest thing to make, while those who like want to see you succeed will probably pick something easier like a hamburger, just a plain burger, not even lettuce and tomato, so we don't have to worry about that, right? And everything is under time pressure, and we're looking to break some kind of score. It's still on the 3-star system, and you know, as you like rise from like, you know, star to star to star, it's like different tiers of rewards. So maybe if you got like 1 star, it's just like oh, okay, great, like you played, thanks for coming. Maybe you'll be more likely in the running to come back in the next time this is held. If you get 2 stars, maybe we expand the stars anyway, but it's like tier 1, it's like, thanks for coming, some sort of participation trophy, but you don't really get to come back. If you get into another tier, maybe that only guarantees you a second chance. Like you get to return like next week or the following in order to play again. And then as you get higher, that's when you start to get into like, you now get Microsoft points or you get a free download code for a game. That would be so cool. And then eventually we could have like the all-stars, the people who all got to like come back and they all play together.
This is such a grand idea. There's something Battle Royale-esque about it, you know, but the 1 versus 100, the thing that it did, right? Like, I think that we probably didn't have the capacity for everybody to be competing. I don't know. I don't know about this, because there's a reason Battle Royales popped up a few years ago, right? I feel like there had to be like internet limitations or something, you know, like for people to be able to play without lag. And maybe that's because it's like an action shooter.
Yeah.
But you didn't have that limitation with like a game show. But you know, this kind of idea of like the game show itself, like 1 versus 100 is in a sense a battle royale game.
Right. because you are fighting against the audience, right? Like us audience members were getting canceled out of the game, or eliminated, I guess, is whenever we like failed to answer or took too long to answer.
Right. It's a battle royale only for the one. Right.
Yeah.
The 100 people are basically all on a team. They are functioning as one person. So it's kind of a 1v1 if like in terms of like for the 100 people it's like a hive mind, you know, and like they're like it's a colony of like one person versus the individual. But yeah, so I don't know. I like that idea with Overcooked, you know, trying to combine it to this like large playable, and with the game show elements, it's entertaining, right? It's fun to spectate that. It's not, you don't just have to be playing in the way that like when you lose in a battle royale, at least when I lose in a battle royale, I don't want to sit there and watch everybody. That's like one of the things that I've criticized Squid Game for. It's like I don't want to have to sit there while everybody loses when I lose in the first round. Like I need to lose like 10 times in the first round in order to like understand the games well enough to be able to progress. And I think I've had that problem with Fall Guys too, you know, and it's like I just want to be able to hop out as soon as I'm dead. Like I don't want to have to wait for a round to end to get experience, you know. It's just like I'm ready to move on. But going back to the team tactics stuff, I'm curious how the developers of Overcooked would feel about people trying to like unlock the meta, you know, because on one hand the game feels built around the frenzy, right? You're supposed to be yelling at your friends or like panicking or, you know, like engaging in this kind of sense of crisis, and this cartoony adrenaline rush, you know, is like it's an odd like landscape of feelings, you know.
Like the music itself really puts out that vibe, right? Where it's like, and then it eventually starts like speeding up and getting a little more like warped or chaotic towards the end, until it's finally. I don't know if I'm stubbing this in just like false memories, but like it almost feels like you hear like a bell getting higher and higher and higher towards like the last, say, 20 seconds or something, like all leading up to that ding when the round is actually over, just really putting that cartoony pressure on you.
On the other hand, the devs might like it, you know. They might be like, wow, people are really doing their best to appreciate our game and to really, you know, unlock the smartest way, the most efficient way of playing. So there could be an element of like, wow, these people, they don't break a sweat and they're doing amazing, you know? So I could see it going both ways, you know, and obviously like, it's not like all developers have the same opinions, you know, and the same developer could experience both of those feelings. So I don't know. I don't even know why I put that frame on it of like, how do the developers feel about it? Because like, you know, it's not one person.
I think overall it would be a positive, right? Because like we're still engaged in the co-op experience, even though the game is now off, or we're between rounds. Like strategizing / planning is that like first part before we actually go into the level.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to be related at all, but like the show Shameless, I watched that show as a drama and people watch that show as a comedy. And like I remember someone telling me that they thought that show was so fun. Like one of my clients told me that show was so funny. And I'm like, you know, and, you know, she obviously like lived in poverty because that's, you know, all of my clients are impoverished. And it was just fascinating to me to primarily view that show. Like, I'm like, there are a bunch of sitcoms out there. Like, you know, there are a lot of things you could watch if you're looking to laugh. But I don't know. I think I had a more philosophical bent when I approached that show. And like, I'm looking at it as like messed up family dynamics that are like worthy of scrutiny, not just, you know, oh wow, how ironic, this is silly, ha ha ha, you know.
Yeah, I get that.
And that's what I don't know, the Overcooked, you know, playing Overcooked one of two ways. Either you lean into the chaos and the frenzy, or like lean into the strategizing and the teamwork
and bringing
efficiency.
Order to it.
Bringing order to Overcooked. Yes, exactly. Same with 5 Minute Dungeon, man. I mean, that's exactly what we were trying to do. You know, it's like define the roles, everybody figure out what they're doing, and then play smart. You know, like you have the same amount of time. It's like, you know, like you can't beat the clock when you're rushing. You're not actually moving time any faster. You're giving in to careless mistakes, essentially.
Right. And one thing I'll say for Overcooked that maybe 5 Minute Dungeon doesn't have is that usually at the end of the clock, you still have orders on the queue, which with 5-minute dungeon, when the clock runs out, it's game over. So you're looking to like clear all the cards and defeat the final boss before that time limit expires. But that is one part that I do really like about Overcooked, is that there is a level of like prioritizing orders that at the very end, at least, that you don't pick up on until you've played like a fair amount of time with the game. And then you know, like, oh, final 30 seconds, okay, these things are not going to, like, fail, so I'm not even going to pay attention to them. Like, the person on the next shift can, like, get these orders. That's why in some cases, when we have orders that are, like, in the yellow or the red, I end up calling out, like, things that just came in, because now we can make extra tip for getting that order done so early, and I know those orders that look like they're going to expire aren't actually going to expire and be held against us. And that's just cool. That's just something that 5-minute dungeon doesn't necessarily have as a strategizing point. Like, it's sort of a different type of prioritization, and it's a contextual prioritization too, because that type of thinking doesn't kick in for me until the final 30.
If we had to play Overcooked with 2 other people, who would you choose? Living or dead?
Just anybody? Oh, man.
Construct the perfect Overcooked team.
I don't know about the perfect Overcooked team, but I would absolutely want Jim Carrey on our team. I almost want to say Gordon Ramsay, just because that's how we kind of started.
You need to
this.
let him go. He's going to come at us. Someone is going to point him in the direction of this podcast, and he's going to be very upset with you.
Like, actually, you know, maybe I would go with that. Jim Carrey and Gordon Ramsay. I think that's equal parts, like, really good cooking man and really funny man, and both could do a bit of the other. Who would you pick?
Can they be fictional?
Sure. You said living or dead. Add fictional to that.
Okay, I'm gonna Hiro Nakamura from Heroes. Dude can stop time. That's killer. I don't know how that's
Oh my god. That's not gonna help you. Like, he's gonna freeze you too.
We'll do like a LAN party so he can freeze me in the same room.
Okay.
And then I'll do, as a counterweight to that, I'll do David Foster Wallace. He didn't have a TV, or like he said that, basically he said he was like addicted to TV. He's like, if I have a TV, I'll just watch TV all day, like blah blah blah. So like he just like chose not to have a TV. And I assume he like did not play video games for that reason, but I don't know. That's not really based on any other information. I've never heard him talk about video games. So I feel like he would be really bad at like understanding the mechanics, but he would have this like anxious like, you know, stream of consciousness that there would be entertainment value in his commentary. And then we could, you know, Hero could pause time and we could all confer. You know, he'd have to like walk away from the desk and touch us all to stop time, and then it would be us. Yeah. I feel like we get in a good flow with the 4 of us. Yeah. But Jim Carrey sounds hilarious. I love that answer. Can it be like Jim Carrey and George W. Bush because they're both painters? Like,
yeah, let's throw Ringo related, Starr like, in there as well. You know what? Let's just remove ourselves from the team. We'll have Ringo Starr, George Bush, David Foster Wallace, right? And
yeah.
Oh man, who is our? Did I already say Jim Carrey? Jim Carrey still has to be on the team. Like, that's our 4. Jim Carrey and David Foster Wallace would probably have like a good amount to talk about, I guess, for like existential stuff.